pleasure now to share with you a good friend of mine and of my family, a resident in Boca Raton of Sinai Residences, someone who I believe is one of the great exemplars of all those qualities that we think about and that we celebrate when it comes to the greatest generation. Humility, honesty, integrity, loyalty, someone who does the right thing, someone you can count on, all of those qualities and more. And this is Bill Schwartz. He was part of the D-Day invasion, which we will be commemorating the anniversary very soon, in a matter of days on June 6th. He's someone who, even though he accomplished so much, has never failed to rise to the occasion and to continue to give back. Age is no barrier for him. Into his 90s, he's still involved in the community. He's still lecturing. He's still sharing thoughts and guidance. And I thought on this Shabbat, it would be wonderful to have him share a few words from the greatest generation. And I know he's very modest. He will not like what I just said, but I'm not saying it for him. I'm saying it for everybody else. I just share some thoughts from the greatest generation to the high school seniors who are graduating now. There's so much more I could say about Bill, but I won't in the interest of time. But I'll turn it over now to Bill to share some thoughts with us. Bill Schwartz.
Thank you for that introduction. And when we say greatest generation, yes, I do not totally level with that. We were a generation. We were a generation evolved from previous generations with not a lot of change in all our levels of, shall I say, quality or lifestyle, our honor of people. It starts with our education in our schools, after the education by our parents. Very early on, we learn the steps of respect for your parents, respect for your teachers, respect for law enforcement. We didn't use that term in those days. There was no such quality evolving specific names. And it was respect for not politicians, which we call them now, we call them elected officials. So when I see the world about me today and seeing how the youth thinks today, they do not have those basics to any great degree. Instead, when teaching history and the proud things that has been accomplished by our forebears in this country and in countries before where they originally emigrated from, we're busy in the current generations of condemning all the wrong things we did. Were wrong things done prior to my generation and prior to that generation and in my generation and on and on? Well, of course, this is how the world evolves. But to condemn a country gives complete freedom, gives a complete choice of life, choice of occupation, choice of everything you want to do. And today we have evolved that we do not teach those basic things of pride of our country. We used to call it civics. That's a gone class. And what I can say to this graduating class is that look to your country. We had a very famous, wonderful president. On his inauguration, he said, the most famous statement that'll never leave us. Ask not what you can ask of your country. Ask what you can do for your country. If everybody has attitudes of that nature, or it applies to your country, it applies to your family, it applies to your friends, it applies, once again, to your teachers, to your law enforcement, and to your elected officials. We need to do that. We need to participate not in protests. We need to participate in selecting candidates that we believe are going to lead our city, our state, or our nation in a correct direction. So how do you do that? You say, I only have one vote. Yes, one vote is what counts. But you talk to your friends, your family, your associates. You select that candidate, and what you have to do is not just vote for that candidate, you need to support that candidate. How do you support it? Yeah, financially, they need to run a campaign. But that's only the beginning. You need to decide if that candidate is someone you want in office, work for that candidate. The next step. Early on, my family taught me that my main mission in life, notice I said main mission, was to help people who need help. That was their way. That's what they taught my sister and myself, and that's what I taught my children. So that we're very involved in working for proper people in office. We work for our charities. And again, we just don't give dollars. We work for those charities. When I sold my company, I had no spare time on my hands. Matter of fact, I had more spare time when I was running my company than I do now, because I'm full-time work for charities. Spend some time working for candidates, but my main occupation and fulfills me day to day, full day, is working for charities. Working to do fundraising for the charities and certain other charities, such as the Honor Flight, which hardly anybody has not heard of. It's a program where veterans of our too many of conflicts that this country has had, the world has. We take those veterans to Washington, D.C. to see the monuments and see the special services that are obtained for them, to Arlington Cemetery, to the changing of the guard, teaching respect of the memory of those who came before us and what they did to make our country free. This is what America is all about, a wonderful experiment in democracy. And right now, we see a really big caution flag out there because of this virus, which is endangering us all. And it isn't like previous viruses. We pretty much got a handle on them and knew how to pretty much knock them out. This one is still a mystery, and still we're not the greatest at handling it. And we haven't got a vaccine, which at least this non-medical person, as I see it, is really the only answer to this horrible disease. And it is our American wonderful capabilities of what we have built. We took a peaceful nation when we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, and we were nowhere ready for military like those antagonists that were after us. We whipped this country into shape in no flash down time. Now you might compare with what's happening now. The medical industry, pardon me, medical industry is doing pretty much the same, almost the same what we did in World War II, doing everything they can to fight this tremendous thing. This is in front of all of you graduating now as a first step graduation. Where you'll go on from here, whether it's a trade, which is a good thing, or whether it's into a professional career of other levels, you need to remember there's more than just earning money and buying all kinds of equipment, cars, toys, and so forth. You need to give your time to your communities. You need to give thought to helping people. I started out, I was getting a 50-cent a week allowance. 25 cents with that. I lived in a very small rural town. The school was a very small school. We had a cafeteria, if you want to call it that, but they didn't serve food. We came with our food, brown bags. No government agency was giving us lunches or breakfasts or more. No, we were in very hard financial times, harder financial times than what we're seeing right now, of unemployment, lack of food, clothing. What happened though? Everybody went to work and did what they could. So my 50-cent allowance gave me 25 cents of that was used to buy a 5-cent bottle of milk. Notice I said bottle. In those days it was still in glass. And then came Saturdays, I would walk 4 miles to town where there was a bank. And I'd walk to the teller, put 25 cents on the counter, was for a Christmas savings account. Yes, they'd take 25 cents gladly. And so come Christmas time or Hanukkah time, one had something in that era to take care of, of something for a Christmas present or a Hanukkah present, as the case may be, for our closest family members, little as it was. My father said to me, he said, you know, that you had the right idea there, but you know, you do have to pay dues. I said, what do you mean pay dues, Dad? He said, well, he said, let's take a look outside. He said, you see that beautiful sky up there? I said, yeah, Dad. He said, that's beautiful, isn't it? I said, yes. He said, that's free, isn't it? I said, yes. He said, did you see those beautiful trees out there? Is that beautiful? I said, yes, Dad. Is that free? I said, sure, it's free. He says, no, you need to pay dues. How can you expect me to pay dues when I just get that 50 cents allowance and it's gone for that purpose? Should I give up the Christmas savings account? He says, oh no, that's a wonderful thing you're doing. You're bringing joy and pleasure to somebody other than yourself. So I said, well, then what do I do? Where am I going to get the funds in order to pay dues? He said, well, maybe you forgot, but 2 months ago, you asked me for 10 cents more. Do you remember that? I said, yes, Dad. He said, you remember what it was for? I said, yes, it was for the Red Cross. He said, son, that's paying dues. And when you graduate from school and you're working, you have to remember to pay dues. But that's only a portion of the dues. That's the monetary portion. You have to work for those charities. Now, in your life, you'll decide what your interests are, where you want to go. But just remember, materialism should become secondary in your life. Think of the quality things. Go back to President Kennedy's words. What can you do for your country? What can you do for your family? What can you do for the poor and downtrodden? What can you do to help your fellow citizens?
I want to thank you, Bill, very much for sharing some of your thoughts. In the meantime, my son Ari walked in. He's graduating from his senior class. He was a little delayed. He was having some ceremony for the Honor Society, so I apologize for the delay, but he heard quite a bit of it. And what I'd really like to do is have Ari respond a little bit to what you said. And then I'd also, Bill, like to ask you a few other questions about your illustrious background. So I'm going to turn it over to Ari. He's graduating from his senior class over at Olympic Heights in Boca Raton. And
congratulations, Ari. That's a wonderful achievement. to not just graduate, but to become a member of the Honor Society, hey man, that tells me who you are.
Thank you so much. We're proud he graduated with honors. And if you're wondering who's that in the background, that's the person that brings joy to Bill's life. She is in the background, but she's always present. She's ever present. Her joy is right with us right now. I'm going to ask Ari to share a few words. Go ahead, Ari.
We can see you square.
I thought what you said was extremely inspiring. Obviously, our generation's not going through anything like your generation had to, but we appreciate your support. We appreciate your words. I thought they were very beautiful. I think that the class of 2020, they get too much. They get too much praise. I've heard in the media, I've woken up at 4 a.m. every day and done my work. I think it's been easier than being in school. But I really, really appreciate what you're saying. I think that our generation can learn a lot from the greatest generation. I think that your values of giving back to your community are something that I can take with me the rest of my life. And I really appreciate what you had to say. Thank you very much.
Now I want to share some thoughts also. Thanks a lot, Ari. I just want people to know that Bill and I have been friends for a while, and we're of different parties. And we have great respect for each other. And if nothing else comes of this whole communication and this conversation, I hope people will recognize that what Bill is able to accomplish is to represent values that transcend party, that transcend religion, that are values that our country needs, that are reflected in e pluribus unum. We all have to be one. And we all have to talk to each other, even if we have a different point of view. Bill said many things that I thought were wonderful. I didn't agree with all of it, nor do I need to agree with all of it. If we only talk to people we agree with, then our country and our lives are in bad shape. We need to be able to hear other people and listen to what they're saying and not think, well, he doesn't agree with me, so therefore I don't want anything to do with him, or he's a bad person, or I hate him. I'm so glad to have Bill here. He says we shouldn't protest. Ari and I have led many, many protests throughout our lives. We do things in our way to make this country great. I believe that when people were alive during the attack by Japan and Germany, that people were galvanized to fight back and to defend this country and to come together as never before and to say, we're going to unite against a common threat. When I was growing up, our country didn't face such a threat. We didn't have that type of galvanizing moment that brought everyone together. Instead, we were raised in a different time. The time we were raised, we saw our country doing things in other countries that we thought were not right. And we saw the environment being slowly destroyed. And we thought that we need to speak out against this because it's in our country's history to speak up and to demonstrate. And that's the form of patriotism. Bill's way and my way may be different, but in one way they're exactly the same. We love our country. We will do everything we can for it. And I'm glad to see that Bill, even at his age, is vibrant and strong and active. And you might look at him, you wouldn't guess how old he is. And I'm not going to give it away. But I will tell you this, that the reason why he is so vibrant and strong right now is because he has purpose. Because he wakes up in the morning with something other than just thinking where he's going to get his dinner from or what meal is coming. He wakes up with a purpose to contribute and give back. Something that he learned from the greatest generation and something that we need to learn today. So I'm really glad to have you here. Now, Bill, I wanted to ask you a question. Around this time, I think it was 76 years ago, you were getting ready or preparing for the D-Day invasion. I don't know if you even knew what was coming. I think it was top secret, so you probably didn't. But I just want to ask you, what was it like in the days leading up to that? What thoughts were on your mind when you realized that you were about to be part of a force that was going to try to liberate Europe and the world from Nazi Germany? And what was going through your mind as you thought that you were going to face vicious fire from people and be part of that liberating force? What were you thinking at that time?
Well, I make a lot of addresses around the country, as you know. And so frequently people ask me, were you scared? I said, if you're a human being, you got to be scared, but also confident. You know, let me take you back a step, if I may. Before we were actually into the war, I knew what was coming. So here's a guy that doesn't even believe in the death penalty. But I came home on vacation from school and I enlisted. I want you to know there were 16 million Americans in uniform in World War II. 16 million. And it is the only war, from my limited knowledge of our country or any country, where the vast majority, by a great percentage, were enlistees. They didn't wait to be drafted. Do I condemn those that waited to be drafted? Absolutely not. They served, and they served a purpose. Of those 16 million, 410,000 never came home. I was in the D-Day invasion. At that time, I was a company commander. When we landed on that beach, amongst the most indescribable enemy options, a high-powered, well-trained military, we were pretty well-trained and at rush bases, did not have as super much equipment. We were catching up at that point. Within 48 hours, I lost 80% of the men under my command. I live with that every day. I still have nightmares over it. They were my responsibility. I came home. Yes, I was wounded. I had 3 Purple Hearts. That's not the thing. I came home. 410,000 did not. And tens of thousands came back with broken bodies and broken minds. All dedicated people, human beings that would walk right into a firefight knowing the odds were against them. We land on a flat beach with no protection, looking up at cliffs, and they're shooting down at us from established gun and turrets, and we had nothing. We didn't mind. We threw our ropes up on the cliffs. We grappled them on a foot. We climbed up. We're dying left and right, blood all over us and others. We kept going. Why? Why? Ask yourself that question. I think you'll come up with the proper answer. You had the most wonderful country in the world and a wonderful life, and you knew you were doing the right thing against a great, severe enemy. Sorry I had to go into that. It hurts me even to talk about it, but you need to know that your dedication to your country is so important. Let's hope we don't have wars. Humans seem to want a battle. Sorry for that.
Well, I want to thank you for going back over that painful history, because I think it's really important that people understand the amazing courage that people demonstrated and what they went through. Because today, a lot of times people think, oh, I got it tough. Oh, I'm afraid. I don't want to speak out, or I don't want to get involved. It's really shameful that anyone would feel that way after hearing about what you went through, and so many others did too. It's really inspiring for us to know what the human being is capable of doing and how we're able to overcome fears. Obviously, you must have been tremendously fearful, but the point is that heroes are not people who don't experience fear. They're people who experience it and overcome it.
I have to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
We're not heroes. What we did was our job to defend our country. We're not heroes.
Well, I'll accept the correction. In our minds, perhaps we look at it differently, but that's part of what the greatest generation is all about. It's just people who did what they needed to do, and that was just expected of them. And that's why we consider them such wonderful role models for us. Wanted to ask you also, Bill, if you have any thoughts about what was going on in the Holocaust. I know that you weren't living stateside at the time, so you didn't necessarily get the information we did. But what did you know from where you were sitting, and what did you think that we should be doing, and what do you think about the way the United States handled the Holocaust?
The United States handled the Holocaust miserably poorly. We started with not accepting the Jews who came over by boat, and we wouldn't accept them. We had a faulty administration that let that happen. And the Holocaust itself is still why we held back bombing those concentration camps. I did not know, we knew that there was anti-Semitism that's a miniature baby step word to describe what was going on. But we didn't know before we got in the military, certainly not in the military, the degree of what was taking place. The news to us and fighting in foreign lands, we didn't get mail. We got some mail here and there, but very little. And we did get news while you were in training, and that was it. After that, it was closed off. But I had, how should I say, the misfortune of opening up one minor concentration camp. And I tell you that that's riveted in me of what I saw, how anybody could treat fellow human beings like that for no baseless reason whatsoever, other than that they were a different race. You know, anti-Semitism has been in the history of the world. Hitler used anti-Semitism very wisely, believe it or not. You didn't expect to hear me say that. As horrible as it is, it was his tool, because what he did in building the military machine that the Versailles Treaty prohibited him from doing was because people didn't have food, they didn't have gasoline for a car, they didn't have heat to heat their homes. He said it was the Jews' fault. It's wonderful. The smallest population on the face of the earth, so who cares? We can toss them away. It'll serve my purpose. He had a team that knew and understand that that would work. It was a cover to handle everything to keep people in line so he could build that tremendous, terrible war machine to almost conquer the world. And believe it or not, there is well-defined history that shows 3 different times in World War II how close we Allies came close to losing the war.
Yeah, well,
there are 3 of us in this program. We would not be here.
Right. History has shown that the United States actually helped to suppress the information of the Holocaust, which is why we didn't know about it. It's not simply that we didn't know. There were people who knew, but the information was being suppressed, which is another one of the great sins that we committed, and that not just the United States, but the world community. There were some incredibly brave, righteous Gentiles who risked their lives, and some who paid with their lives for saving Jews. But in general, the nations of the world really failed in that regard. And I just also wanted to find out from you, Bill, you said that you were opposed to protests. If you were living in the United States prior to the Holocaust, and if you had realized, if you had known, it was made known what was going on, and you knew the United States was not going to let people in, would you have protested?
If I could do it in a peaceful way, perhaps I would. But I guess my repugnancy for protests is based on what happens at protests. They get out of hand.
Right.
Now, quickly, people are going to say, well, law enforcement gets too onerous on protesters. No, law enforcement only becomes necessary to restrain when people get out of the hand of protesting and into rioting, whether it's a miniature riot or whether it's just some minor stuff, and it grows and it magnifies and it becomes a terrible, terrible thing. So my way of protesting is Yes, through our electoral system. That is the way to do it.
Hey, Bill, I appreciate
Again, support the candidate, both monetarily and working for them. That's how you protest.
Yeah.
Not physically waving banners and screaming on the streets and burning tires and so forth.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. Ari and I have done a lot of work working with candidates, and I appreciate what you're doing also. And we might work with different ones, so maybe we'll neutralize each other, but I think it's a good thing. But I just want you also to know, Ari and I have done protests since he could talk. We've never, ever been involved in anything like what you're suggesting. I agree with you. A protest that gets violent is absolutely counterproductive. We've only done peaceful protests, and that's what we believe in. So we share that view, Bill. Violent protest, rioting, mayhem, disrespect is wrong, and we share you and we share your view on that. One other question before I turn it back over to Ari. Leading up to World War II, the United States was caught apparently unaware of the invasion by the Japanese and the attack by the Japanese, and also was watching the Nazi buildup and was getting reports of atrocities and hearing and desperate pleas from Great Britain to get involved and to help out. We didn't do anything. We didn't even build up our military sufficiently until we were attacked. Do you think it was a mistake for the United States to wait so long before we got ready and militarily prepared to deal with this threat?
That's one great question and leads to my own understanding, philosophy, and a little bit of knowledge of what took place. There was a reason that we didn't get immediately involved when we knew that Britain was being attacked and where this could lead. There was a reason, because as much as I really dislike Roosevelt for not recognizing the plight of the Jews and keeping his Secretary of State out of command and taking over and stopping it, no, it was because if you remember what we did, this is little known, but it's history, not just my philosophy or my thought. Since Roosevelt knew that he could not persuade the citizens of the United States to enter war, he knew he couldn't get Congress to agree to engage in war. So Japan was totally reliant upon oil imports. They had no oil. We cut off their oil supplies. Roosevelt skillfully knew that this would create some kind of an attack from the Japanese hierarchy. And he was right. Pearl Harbor was a cost. Once Pearl Harbor took place, the first time in history the United States ever had a almost invasion, which was really what they had planned, but it didn't come off, but an attack on United States territory. That was, now he knew he could get Congress to okay, and the public would be behind him, our military, to go into war. I think that's what took that time, and that was the raison d'être. Silence.
Thanks, Bill. I just want to ask maybe Ari to conclude. Do you think that there's in World War II, our country took a little while to get ready to defend ourselves and to prepare? Are there threats today that we're facing, like climate change or religious animosities, things that are looming in the horizon that perhaps you can learn from history to prepare for and to get ready? Is there something that you think we should be preparing for? And do you think that your generation perhaps can learn from the greatest generation to be prepared and to accept that challenge?
No volume. No volume.
Sorry. I muted us. Sorry. So from what I've heard, the values of courage, bravery are stuff that I can obviously learn from. Obviously, my generation's gone through nothing even similar to what your generation's gone through, but I really like what you said about giving back to the community, being part of charities. I mean, I know once I go to college, I'm going to be very busy for the next few years, but I hope that, inspired by you, I can make sure I have time to give back to charities and stuff around campus and stuff. And I'm definitely going to remember this conversation forever. This has been really enlightening. It's one thing to hear about history from a history professor who hasn't really experienced it, but it's something else to hear it directly from someone who was there. I think that's a very enlightening experience. So I thank you very much for this experience.
Well, I hope you can inspire your class with that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm very impressed that you feel that way, and I only wish you wonderful.
Thank you very much, Bill. By the way, what was the concentration camp? You said there was a concentration camp that you were there when it was liberated?
Very small concentration camp. You're going to ask me for the name of it.
Where was it?
Well, it was in Germany, not in Poland.
Right. All right.
So we never won. We never. I was a battalion commander at that time. My battalion, part of Third Army, we did not go into Poland.
You know, we have three generations right here. We have Bill Schwartz, me, Rabbi Barry Silver, my son Ari, and our congregation is Va-Dor generation to generation. Right back here, I have the flag that was given to my father when at his celebration of life for his service in World War II. He didn't have to go either. He was a rabbi who was a confirmed pacifist. He did not believe in fighting wars, but he went, when he was a young rabbi, he went to his mentor. He said, I don't know what to do. I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in war, but our nation was attacked. What should I do? He said, Rabbi, your people are over there fighting in Europe and in Asia. You need to be with your people. And he went there and he served there and he brought together people of different religions. That's where he learned to be an ecumenical rabbi. He was serving in the Philippines, in Leyte. They didn't have a minister for every religion. He was the rabbi for all the religions. And when he came back here, he recognized that all the religions must work together for a common cause. And we need to use religions to build bridges of understanding and not walls of separation. And he dedicated himself to American ideals and also to interfaith harmony. And when I listen to Bill and I see what happened before, I recognize this. Because we waited so long to get involved, and because we waited until the attack was brought upon us, and we're not proactive, we suffered greatly. And it was extremely difficult to deal with the challenge. And we suffered many losses because we were not prepared. And so in my generation, in Ari's generation, we see looming ahead a threat of climate change. And we will not allow this country to be unprepared and to be caught unawares, because if we do, we'll also suffer great losses. So I believe that one of the lessons from the past is that we must have the courage to recognize a threat before it clobbers us over the head, and to take action and to work together with people throughout the world in order to bring about a better place. I'm glad that Ari's here studying science, because I think science is going to be part of the answer. I'm thrilled that we have Bill, who's still active, still vibrant, still sending his message. And I really thank you, Bill, for sharing this message with Congregation Va-Dor and also throughout many people in cyberspace. Thank you, Bill, for your service. You're an inspiration to us. And Shabbat Shalom to you and also to Joy.
Thank you. I want to say that I know the deep respect you had for your father's wisdom and capabilities, but his son is certainly not off the beam with wonderful dedication, sincerity in when he speaks, and you're leading right in his line. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of being in the audience with you and your son, Ari. Congratulations again on your graduation and the wonderful life that you will have in front of you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Sei gesund.
Shabbat Shalom.
And thank you, Sheila. Take care, Bill. Take care.